everyone. Welcome to the special episode. Here I'm unfortunately alone. Lindsey really cannot make it today. So I'll be talking with Shannon Brouk from Copic Markers. She is the marketing coordinator for the Copic Marker company. Welcome to the show today. I can't wait to get into all things Copics, as I've got a bajillion of these at home myself. Hi there.
Hello, hi.
How did you are an artist also yourself, I should have mentioned
Yes,
that. You have some absolutely gorgeous work, which I highly suggest people visiting shannonbrouk.art, if I got that,
yes,
and
yeah.
check out your work. Some really nice stuff. How did you get into art to begin with?
So hello everyone. My name is Shannon Brouk and I live in the United States. I live in Kansas City, Missouri, so pretty much just exact middle. Born and raised in the Midwest, and no one in my family was actually creative at all. As far as artists are concerned, I come from a very business-oriented family. So I was definitely a black sheep. But growing up, I was doodling since I was a kid, like in spiral notebooks and sketchbooks. I've always been interested in just doodling and drawing. I used to write my own comics when I was a little kid. Like I was very much
Really?
so, yeah, I was very much so into just any kind of creative outlet, journaling, drawing, doodling. That was always kind of my forte, and reading a lot. I didn't really watch a lot of television growing up, which a lot of people kind of like, you haven't seen that show? You haven't seen that movie? I'm like, nope, too busy drawing. Um, but yeah, and so I kind of fell into art more seriously once I got into high school. I had a teacher that saw a lot of talent in me, and she actually told me like, "Hey, you can do this as a career." Before that, because of my family being, business oriented, I never really saw it as an option as a career. I just thought it would be my hobby for life. But when that art teacher kind of like, pushed me to really go for it with art and my pieces, that kind of led me to find the Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia. I also was a lifelong swimmer. So that school actually has athletic programs, and I got recruited to swim there. So
Wow.
it was kind of a win-win situation to help pay for college. So I ended up joining their swim team, and then I went there from 2014 to 2018. So I'm a recent grad. I'm 26. But I went there and I swam. I got my BFA in illustration, and my time there was kind of split between like the illustration department from that time period of 2014 to 2018. They kind of taught you half and half between like traditional mediums and digital. But I revisited the school a couple years later, and I revisited some old teachers just, on behalf of Copic. I was there for like a customer appreciation day at their school bookstore. Anyways, don't mean to go on too much of a rabbit hole, but when I revisited and I talked to some teachers 2 years later, they had changed a lot of the curriculum. And so they took away more of those traditional classes and they added more digital. And so I'm like, wow, I'm glad I went there when I did, because I am a traditional artist. And so my, you know, forte has always been like pens, colored pencils, markers, kind of like the easy to go materials. So you don't have to put water on your desk, clean your brushes, make sure you don't have cats running across your surface. So so I keep it kind of to the easily portable mediums. I kind of, put a weird term on it, but yeah, so when I went to art school, they were more so like, work in the medium that you like, that you feel comfortable in, because when a client tries and hires you later on, they're just going to want to see authenticity. Like usually that's why an illustrator will get hired, is because, what makes you special to a graphic designer. They did talk about that a lot because there's so many schools that just give that generic graphic design degree. Like a state school here in Missouri would tell you like, you can just get a graphic design degree. So what makes you stand out as an illustrator is what they would always tell us to focus on in our portfolio. So make sure you have original content, make sure you work in a medium that is best for you, so they would kind of push that on us. So later on, when I was a junior and senior at that art school, I got to get into more traditional mediums. But for the first 2 years when you're in foundation classes, you kind of have to do what they tell you. Like if they tell you to work in watercolor, you do work in watercolor. But that way you do see like, oh, I don't like watercolor, it takes too long to dry. Or I don't like that I can't press, undo. So a lot of people, I feel, can sometimes get lazy with the undo button, or you can zoom in so much on your screen and work for 10 hours on like a 2-inch square. And then you zoom out and you're like, oh crap, I still have so much.
So true. Focusing and
Yes.
pretty much on anything, just fixating on something, it will keep you from moving forward endlessly.
Yes. Absolutely. So for me, after those, 2 years of kind of foundational classes, I was like, I'm done with computers. Like I already stare at a screen enough. Like I don't want my eyes to be dead. I have hopefully a long life ahead of me, so I want to keep my eyesight good. No contacts for me yet, so let's fingers crossed it stays that way. But yeah, and so when I saw that change of curriculum and that they're pushing more towards digital, made me a little bit sad, because I'm like, well, you lose that kind of human touch, that like happy mistakes. What's the Bob Ross saying?
Yeah.
Like happy little accidents.
Happy little accidents, yeah.
Yeah, like you miss that when you're when you're working traditionally. Like sure, you can make brushes that mimic that on like Procreate or Photoshop or things of that nature, but it's just, what do you do when you finish a digital painting? You print it? Like you don't get to see the texture, you don't get to see the tackiness or the surface, or
you can't there is a certain element that you can never have in digital. As amazing as digital art is,
yeah,
and it will save you and give you work and all that stuff, there's still an element to traditional you cannot recreate. And to have
exactly
a piece on the wall,
yeah.
they just haven't quite come up with that yet. I know.
No, yeah, and so that'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But yeah, and I'm young, I'm 26, and so to see it evolve that quickly from a college perspective, it's just, I don't know if it's good, I don't know if it's bad, it's just different.
Yeah.
And so I just, similar to how I can write in cursive very easily, cursive is always what I go to. But people will look at it now when I write and think, oh, you're really good at calligraphy. No, 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 completely different things. Just because I write in cursive doesn't mean it's calligraphy, but because it's become more of a like niche to be able to write in cursive. It's not even, calligraphy is a whole separate, form of art, and so it's kind of sad in that sense of like, wow, can you even do long division by hand? Like, we rely so
That
much.
was in the back of my mind. It is actually, that's a really good point. It's very similar. If you don't learn long division, dull as heck as it is,
Yeah.
don't understand what it is you're doing on a calculator, which of course,
Yes.
long live the calculator. I certainly don't want to live without it. But if you don't know how to do long division, so yeah, being able to take your pencil and a piece of paper, going outside and drawing a tree or something, you learn so much from that. Or
yes, observational drawing, absolutely. And so I just really pray that, art schools and any kind of education, when you're teaching drawing, still kind of makes you, I say makes you, but it's fun, like to observe and draw what you see. Because if you see, like, even just to go downtown, if you live in a city and draw buildings, learning perspective, it's different from sitting and observing and drawing what you see than seeing what's on your computer. And so there's a different element there that I strongly encourage. So one of the things I do for Copic now, and this is a good segue, I hope, is I write all of our educational blogs on our website. And so when I write a blog and make the content for it, I focus on, if you're trying to find reference images, gathering on the internet is great, especially if it's cold now, it's the winter, you live in a remote place, there's only so much you can do. The internet is great. But otherwise, like, go outside, like go for a walk. If you want to learn how to draw a tree, sit by one, or stare out your window at one, and kind of gather from what, and your eyes can learn so much from the observation, because it's more intimate of a connection, I feel, with yourself and another object versus just what's displayed in front of you. So I always encourage that,
and
get out there.
There's an element of 3D when you're actually outside or sitting at your desk and looking at the cup on the table or something, that if you see it on a monitor, you interpret it as 3D, but you're not actually seeing the 3D and the natural distortion that comes with it.
Yes.
And so learning to draw by the rules gives you the ability to break them for real and then really create something different. Anyway, it must be
Totally.
fun to write those blogs and to encourage people to do that. Do you do your own classes?
I haven't gotten there yet. I know we talked a little bit before we started recording just to meet each other and everything. But yeah, it's just when I work for Copic, it does take up, that full 8-hour workday. And then there's only so much time you have left outside of it. So as much as I want to make my own blog content, I just haven't found the time yet. So I channel everything that I do have time for, obviously, in the Copic blogs because I write them for the brand. And so when I write Copic blogs, I focus typically on two things. Drawing, like making a composition, making a good sound drawing, and how to outline them because we do also sell pens. And so I teach mostly like, okay, we're going to draw a forest, let's say. So here's different tree shapes. So I'll spend a whole blog talking about how to draw them, how to, sketch them proportionally, how to add your own stylized flair to it, and like tips on how to create a smooth line. Because sometimes it does take practice to not get a shaky line or to learn kind of when to pick your hand up and place it back down so it doesn't look too obvious that you had to stop. Depending on how big your paper is too, you have to. But in the second blog, I'll go into color, like how to choose your color. If you want to make a warmer scene, then choose warm grays. If you want to choose like a summertime scene, maybe this yellow and this blue will look better together. So because Copic has 358 colors, it can be very overwhelming and very hard to choose. And not just Copic, but like if you're a painter, I mean, the same rules apply. Colored pencils, there's so many choices and there's so many different temperatures of color. So I like to go into one blog, like how to make the art look good, and then how to compositionally, and then how to color it appropriately to kind of fit the needs of what you want. So typically my blogs have a part 1 and part 2, or 3 or 4, depending on the subject. But I like to go into detail, so it's not just surface level content. There's plenty of resources out there that just barely touch the iceberg, but I want to go deeper and see like how we can really, accomplish higher level drawing. So
Have you
yeah, that's
have you ever tried doing some with limited palettes of like just 3 colors or just 4 colors? That's
yes,
super fun to do. I
yes,
find just in any medium that you use,
yes,
or maybe pencil because it's only 1 or 2, it's only black or white. But anything else,
yeah.
just using 2, 3, 4, or whatever, but picking a limited palette, you learn so much from it. It's just a pleasure to do.
Yes, that and just grace. So,
Yeah.
like, one of the things I love to tell people is like, well, if you are struggling on how to color something, do color your sketch with just grays. Like maybe 5 or 6 grays. If it's a big piece, maybe, 12. But just working in grays will show you, okay, the foreground should probably be lighter. And then as you move in the background, things get darker. So if you're drawing like I'm just going to keep with the forest concept. So if you're drawing like a forest, you want to probably put, and maybe it's in the fall, so you want to have like orange, like bright yellows, bright oranges in the front, move to darker oranges, darker reds, browns maybe, so you can have this sense of perspective with like a flat image, unless, because it's just a piece of paper. So yeah, I do teach that in the blogs as well. And the blog content, as of now at least, is just step-by-step scans. So I'm writing it and I'm drawing it. So I'm just, okay, draw a little bit, scan, draw a little bit, scan. And so it's all just completely my own work and just, it's very authentic. And so I hope it comes across that way to people who read them, of seeing like, here's the step-by-step process that works for me. You try it, tag us on social media. And if it doesn't work, email us too. So
That's
I just want to,
fabulous.
yeah, because there's certain things that I've learned too from art school that I'm like, that really worked. I want to leak that tip, or that does not work. I want to warn people so they don't have to make the same mistakes.
That's really,
So
really good. How did you fall into Copics? How did you get?
Yeah, so I live in the Midwest and there's only so many art stores around, unless I drive downtown. So Hobby Lobby is the closest thing for me. And so back in the day, they had those 40% off coupons. And so I would take that 40% off coupon and I would beg my mother to buy me one. And that's pretty much how it started because I would see them behind the glass case and I'm like, those must be special. So I'm like, I need those. And they were refillable. So that's kind of how I won her over. Of like, if it goes dry, I could just buy a refill ink and I don't have to throw away the marker. So I can just keep refilling it with more and more various ink back then, Copic ink now. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And
Yeah.
actually that kind of leads into, and maybe in a few minutes we'll start asking a few questions, but
Hmm.
some listener questions and learn a little bit more about the actual markers themselves. But how many different markers and pens does Copic actually offer? Back in my day, I only knew about I think you only had the round tip ends or something. Way
Yeah. So
It's like a long time ago.
so there's actually three markers and I have sketch all over here. Let me grab a classic and a chow. Okay. So
I have sketch markers too. I think these
yeah,
are the
because
sketch
I
markers, eh? They have the chisel end,
yes,
and then
and the
on the
brush.
you've got the brush. I love these. I
They're
love
awesome.
it.
Yeah, so the I guess brief little history lesson. So Copic started, or I mean it's still in Japan. The headquarters are outside of Tokyo. And so they started making markers in 1987. And they started off with the Copic Classic or Copic Original, and it's this square shaped one. This one isn't as like popular because it doesn't have the brush nib. It just has this like fatter chisel, and then it has that bullet nib fine.
Yeah.
And then the next marker they debuted was in I think it was 1993, and that was the sketch marker, the one that everyone loves because it comes in the widest range of color. And I do want to show these are both blue markers, but the classic nib of the chisel is just a little bit bigger than
Okay.
the
Yeah.
sketch one.
Yep.
So
Just
it is, if I stack them, it's probably harder to see, but
it,
it is just a little bit bigger.
so you wouldn't be able to get that felt back in the classic then. Like you can't change them.
Oh, the classic marker actually has a lot of different like replaceable nib options. At one point they had like 9 or 10 options. I know those nibs, the optional nibs, didn't sell as much, so I know that they kind of discontinued those. But you can get like a brush nib replacement for your classic marker.
Oh, can you?
And you can, yep. And for people that use Copics in really large amounts of time, they'll buy the classic, and then they'll get the replacement nib that's a brush here, and then they'll just use the classic as a sketch marker because this marker body holds the most amount of ink in it.
Does it really? Oh, that I didn't know.
Yeah, it
Okay.
holds, I can't remember the statistics at the top of my head, but X amount of milliliters more of ink inside that square body because it's just a bulkier marker.
Okay.
I
Can you
also
exchange all the felts between the new, the later versions of the markers
Mhm.
into the classic ones? They will crisscross, and you can.
Yep.
Oh, that's good to
Yeah.
know. That's really
Yeah.
good.
So yeah, no matter. So let's say you bought a marker back in 1980, 87. The same nibs are still in the markers today.
All right.
Yeah. So
That's that's
it's the same
evergreen.
kind of yeah, it's the same technology. And so they made Copic markers in the 80s in Japan because they couldn't find a marker that wouldn't bleed on printed copy paper. So that name Copic is derived from copy. Like so when you print a piece of copy paper on a printer, this is the story they told me when they hired me, that you can run Copic ink on top of it and it won't smudge. Of course, you wait until the printer ink is dried because any ink will smudge with wet ink,
Yeah.
right? So you wait till your printed page is done drying and then you can run Copic ink. So a lot of the colors they first debuted were pretty bright colors, almost like a highlighter colors. And they debuted this classic marker, the square one, I think with around 72-ish colors to begin with. And then as the years progressed, more and more colors have been added, new markers have been created. But yeah, the Copic name came from copy paper.
Oh, that's interesting. Isn't
Yeah,
that
very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never tried Copics on printer paper. I must say, I'm somebody in the sketch card world, so
Mm,
we use all kinds of like thicker card and stuff. And the
yeah.
Copics will occasionally bleed through, which
Mm,
back when I was starting in sketch cards was a bit of an issue
mm.
because you have a print, you have logos and info and all that stuff on the back of the card. So if the ink goes through, well then you
You
can't
might
read
not see it.
card. But I get over time, they've come up with companies that can print cards that don't bleed as
Mm,
much. But that's really
yeah.
interesting to know that it makes it evergreen, that you can actually your really older markers are still perfectly good to use then.
Y-
Um,
Yes. Yeah.
are
So
they light fast, the colors?
yes. So, I mean, I say yes, but also with an asterisk mark because it's if you're going to put a piece of art directly in front of a window, no matter how much you do, UV rays are going to penetrate it, and there's only so much you can do. It's an alcohol-based ink, and
Mhm.
so alcohol does have an evaporative evaporative quality.
Yes.
Sorry, English. So especially like with the kind of remodel of the Various ink to the Copic ink, the old bottle of Various ink would hold 25 milliliters of ink
Mhm.
versus the new one is half, it's 12. And the reason is people would be buying the Various ink and it would be sitting still for years. Like sometimes you wouldn't touch it for years. And so, because of like anything, if you're sitting still for years, the chemical consistency can sometimes break apart, and there could be colored differentiations essentially. And so, because Copic is a very sustainable, very consistent brand, they saw that problem coming up, and so they just, we're just going to cut that, quantity in half so that we don't have that issue with ink consistency separating. You know how you have oil on top of water, it's not going to combine after a while if it sits for a long time, which, unless you're a heavy user, you don't use them as frequently. Like even me, I use them all the time, and I still have quite a few colors just sitting for, I hate to say it, but years. Like I need to buy and refill it one time. I don't need to refill it again that quickly. And so that became so they just remodeled the product, one, so that the refilling would be easier, and two, so you wouldn't have that alcohol separation.
Interesting, fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, that's really good.
I'll try.
Are they
But I'm going to try and grab some Copic ink and we can compare that to the Various ink real quick. I'll just grab a color. So,
Yes, please go
hmm?
on. Please
Oh,
go on.
sorry. Yeah, so this was the old Various ink. It has that kind of tilt up here. And yep,
I have.
hey,
I have, yep.
yeah. And then the new one, I got a rubber band on it, but it looks like a marker.
All
It's
right.
shaped like a circle. And so here's your Chow marker. I didn't talk about this one yet, but it looks very similar.
Mhm.
Same kind of width to it. It has the same kind of, put the sketch up here. So it
Yep.
has the color on the back. But yeah, and so with this too, another reason they remodeled the Various ink into Copic ink is because this actually fits in a wallet now, whereas these did not fit in your Copic wallet because they're kind of bulky and difficult to even stand upright. And so here's your kind of
Into one
physical.
of these, but the new ones would probably fit into one of these things.
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
they
very
do.
good.
So that's another factor. And one last thing too, they redid the nozzles. And so what you would do to refill, yeah, okay, let me put my hand here to see.
Yep, 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 yep.
So completely different.
It would drip. Thank you.
Yes, and so what you would do with the old one, you would just drip onto that kind of chisel side to soak it in and lay it flat to evenly distribute. With the new nozzle, all you would do is actually take out the nib, and this nozzle fits directly into the marker.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's they did such a good job with the redo. I'm like, thank you guys.
Can I
Yeah.
tell you a secret? I
Yes.
I have actually tried pouring these directly into the.
Really?
Yes, I have actually taken the well, either side works. I guess I've actually taken the little sponge
Mm,
thing and tried to. Doesn't work
mm.
well.
Yeah.
A real hurry and you've got like a deadline to do a bajillion different things. You're like, oh man, I don't have time to mess around with dainty stuff. And you're trying to. So this is great with the little tube there. That would.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, because I have, and the reason I say remove the chisel side is because this brush is this one's a harder tip. It's a harder nib. It's stiff, right? It's for that precise outlining. So when you take the tweezers and remove it, it's not going to damage your nib. Versus if you squeeze really tightly with tweezers to remove that super brush nib, you might end up kind of like puncturing it. So I always tell people take out this nib and then, insert the nozzle. So,
Okay. Good
so
tip.
yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I have another question here, actually, seeing as we're kind of falling into it, may as well just go
Yeah.
along. Refills can be a little tricky to find. Are there
Mm,
particular places to get them, or why is it that some of the stores don't carry them so much anymore? Even here in Canada, it can be difficult. Like I mentioned in our
mm,
introduction, I don't use Copics as much as I used to, just because I changed medium for no other reason than that.
mm.
Whenever I do want to find refills and other people too, it can be a little difficult to find. Is there a reason for that?
Most of it is still because of shipping delays from Japan over here, and hold up in the ports. So a lot of it has to do with the distribution and how it goes from Japan to typically LA or on the West Coast, and then how it gets into the inside the country and just gets distributed through like a Michaels or at least in the United States, Blick. Um, so typically I tell people if you want to look to buy Copic ink and you can't find it in a store, Blick.com is a great source. Any of our retailers, essentially. And so that's a great place to find Copic ink because a lot of the stores do just carry common colors, whether it's markers, ink. So they might not have the full range, especially if they don't have the tower in the store, because it depends on your location, depends on the store. If you live in a city where there happens to be an art school, you probably will have the full tower.
Rest of us who live in cow country, that's just not going to happen. We do have a
Yeah.
Michael's, not well, it's about an hour away. They have a few. They do have the Chow ones,
Hmm.
the Chow markers, which would be interesting to know the difference between the Chow markers and the Copic ones.
Yeah, yeah. So I did not, sorry, I got on a spiel with refills, but yeah, so the Chow marker came out in 1998, and this is the circular shaped marker. It has the exact same nibs as the sketch. The only thing is it's sold at a cheaper price because it holds less ink in the barrel. That's
Ah,
it.
okay.
So and there's a smaller color range. So this Chow circle marker comes in 180 colors, whereas this is 358, and then your classic is 214. So different color numbers, but typically the classic is used for design. Architects use it a lot, building designers. So you're going to get a lot of like the common colors with all the grays. Versus Chow, it's more suitable for beginners because of the cheaper price point. But I will just hold up the nibs here because whenever I tell people they're the same nibs, they're like, no, they're not. Yes, they are. So here's the Chow, here's the sketch.
Uh-huh. Well, they look the same from my end, but yeah,
Yeah, same brush nibs. And then let's pull up the medium broad.
here we go. Yeah. Yeah, they look pretty darn similar. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, so they're the exact same nibs.
Can you
It's
mix
just
the inks between all of these different things?
Yep. So the color B12 will be the same in Chow as classic as sketch. It's the exact same ink. It's just you're buying a different ink quantity inside the marker and then, paying for a different price because of how much ink each one will hold.
So just for the heck of it, because I've never done this, but if I had like a refill, say this one,
Mm-hmm.
and then I don't know, refill from a Chow thing or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, and I decide, well, gee, Willikers, I need a color that I just can't find. would I be able to mix and match and create my own and no?
Yes, you can.
Okay, because like I said,
Yes.
I've never
So
done that. But I mean, assuming I would have, would it have? Would it have?
yes. Yeah. So let me pull up another product here. Ooh, okay. So what the cool thing is, Copic ink you can actually buy empty.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Copic ink, this is another really great feature to the new product. So you can buy it empty and it comes like this in the package. You'll have your cap, which has nothing on it because it's your own color. Then you'll have the bottle and you'll have the nib feature to squeeze the ink out of. But essentially, you can take this bottle and say you want to make a, I don't know, just whatever color you want. You can put 2 colors, you can mix 3 colors, fill the bottle up to however you want. And then the Copic Sketch and Classic markers you can buy empty as well. You can't buy the Chow empty, unfortunately, but you can buy an empty marker. So you can buy an empty bottle and an empty marker and then make your own color.
Now I want to start playing with them again. That's just so cool. Because I've
It's
taken,
very neat.
see, I've got tape around these because I kind of wanted to play with the colors myself at one point. But it's really difficult to, when you don't have a bottle to mix them in, to kind of do it on the fly, and then it's already tainted with the color that was in there previously. So that's really cool. I did not know that you could do that now.
Yes. And then I'll segue too, because I know, I think you asked me this before in an email, but with the Copic Wide. So the Copic Wide marker, I think you mentioned before,
Yes.
we do still sell that. It's just empty as well because we didn't, it wasn't as popular as the other markers, and we just decided to make it a empty marker. And so you can just buy the refill ink, like you can just have whatever you have and then just fill the marker up. So similar to how the various ink to Copic ink was remodeled due to a marker sitting still for a long time, if you and just different demand as time has progressed. Things have changed since the 80s. And so there's more digital art as we've discussed. And so because of that change, there's shift in demand. And so we've just made the markers still available, but you just have to fill it up with whatever color you want. And so technically you can get it in all colors. So just have the empty. And then, so say you want to like color a wide area of a sky or something, like a large area of blue, you would just buy the wide and get like a B00 color and then just fill it with the ink and you can quickly apply. That or the airbrush. I don't know.
I was going to ask if that, like, I honestly have never used an airbrush, but I know there are tons of people who do. So you could
Yes.
actually use the inks in an airbrush.
Oh, not the inks, but you can use your sketch and classic again. So what you would, I don't think I have my grip with me. That might be a different supply closet. But essentially, you have kind of an air grip. You
Mhm.
would take off, like this is the classic. You would take off the chisel nib. It would slide into that air grip. You would put an adapter or one of the cans, screwed to it. And then there's a little trigger up here. You just press it and it air brushes against the chisel. And that's how it applies it to the paper.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
Yeah. So again, it's a different concept. Like, people can make a lot of manga illustrations digitally, so people don't use like screen tones necessarily as much. But that product came up because of that, manga illustrations and all of that kind of illustration before digital kind of took that over. The airbrush is a great tool to use to cover a wide surface. And if you use a lot of your, marker by using an airbrush, just refill the marker and then keep going. So
So
it
the wide ones, you could actually, I would guess you would have to get them through a website, seeing as if there are fewer people that buy them, they're certainly not stocked in small towns and things.
yeah. Like the airbrush is usually, again, I would hit those bigger retailers that are authorized retailers that we have, like a Blick or Michaels. I know Canada works a little differently. I think Staples up north has more kind of art supplies than in
We
the
have,
US. Like,
we do have Staples up here. You can get a few of these, but not a whole lot. The Michaels
Mm.
will often have more. There's also a store called Omar Dessert. They
Mm.
often have a large supply of Copics, maybe not the biggest ones, but I've never been in one where I didn't find Copics of some sort. Or
Mm.
so that's pretty good. The staples, well, at least here, anyways. I haven't seen that
Not
many.
really. Gotcha. Yeah. Because I know things might work a little differently, up north for y'all. So, but yeah, here it's mostly Michaels.com, a Hobby Lobby store. Their e-commerce is just a different shopping experience versus the store. And then Blick or Jerry's Artorama or just
Curry's
other authorized.
in Canada, I think you can get them at Curry's actually too.
Oh, Curry's. Okay. Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
I seems to me I've seen it. I just went to Curry's lately for a few things and well online, and I think you can get them there just in case any
Mm.
Canadians out there are still looking. So yeah, there because I'm mostly part of a sketch card company,
Mm.
milieu group,
Mm.
the thing. Um, there are tons of artists who do other things, but also do sketch cards and use the
Mm.
Copics. So the do you have like can you actually offer discounts on refills or things for like artists that use them all the time, or are there things?
Um, That is because I work in marketing. I don't work in the sales and distribution side of the company. So you can email us. And so it gets to the right person that can answer that question. I just don't know if I'm at liberty to answer that
It
because
was
of
one of the
the,
questions that was in the group, for
yeah,
right, volume pricing, if you like, yeah, and for teachers, of course, because there are a number
yeah.
of teachers who are art teachers who also follow
Hmm.
this sketch card thing and are kind of curious to know if they can offer something to their students so that their students could actually use Copics.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say so. The email would be support@us.2.com. I would just email them and then see what we can do. I know that Two Corporation Americas, the company that I is the umbrella company of Copic, we started in early 2019. Before that, we had another distributor that was distributing Copic products. So the team we currently have now is different than basically anything before 2019. And so in early 2000s and the early 2010s, you had like certification programs to be Copic certified. You had different like Copic in the classroom things, and that was through our former distributor. And so those were all programs done through them. And so because it's only been a few years of this new kind of umbrella directly branched from Japan, there's just differences that we are still going through. And with delays from the pandemic, it's just, again, delayed some things from happening. But I can see that happening in the future once more logistics are put into place, I think.
Is there a
It's
place
just
where people could follow along for updates and stuff like that on whatever's happening with the company?
Yeah, so we do post announcements on either our Instagram, our Facebook, Twitter. I think we have a TikTok now as well, and a YouTube. So it's Copic Official US. Um,
Copic Official US, yes.
Copic Official US, yes. And so if there's anything going on that's new there, as far as products, discounts, giveaways, anything is related to that, it'll be put on social media. I believe we still have a Twitter, and I'm trying to think what else. I think that's all that we have, but I say all, but that's like five or
It's
six
quite a
things.
bit. Quite a
Yeah, it's a lot.
I have another question on techniques, actually, the techniques of using Copics, which of course is different markers than other media. For instance, do you have any clear coating that you can use on top? That's something I've never tried when I used Copics a lot, like a varnish
Yes.
or a spray or something.
So we don't sell one through Copic specifically, but I use either this UV resistant. So this is how I help with that light fast issue. So if I'm going to be framing something that I did with Copic or color anything really, I'll spray it with this. So You can also get, if you're framing something, that UV resistant glass, but that can get pretty expensive. So I use Kmart varnish as well. This also helps to just kind of seal your product. Most of my fine art work is done with Copic, like 90% Copic, and then there's like a 10% colored pencil for those precise details that only a pencil could really give you. So I use this varnish so it helps things from like the paper from not yellowing over time. It just makes it more archival. So I usually do that outside, not on a windy day,
Yeah.
stand far away from your piece, make sure you have a test dummy area first. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
What do you suggest is the best tool for blending your colors in Copics? You do have blender mark, like I have I think, well, white, which
The
is
zero blender.
zero blender and all, but it doesn't always work really all that well. Sometimes you get a granulated quality, sometimes you just get warping.
Yeah, to me, I don't use the zero blender unless I'm using it for detailing because I see it as a subtractive tool, not necessarily as a blending tool. Because if you hold that, because it's just alcohol essentially in a marker form. So if you hold it down to the paper, especially with a dark area, you'll start to see it push away the pigment. And so I use it as a subtractive tool, like water in a watercolor piece, more so than like as an eraser, or I've heard it used a lot of different ways, but to me, when I blend, I will use a slight, like one of my mid-tone or darker colors first, and then I'll blend it out with my lighter one.
Okay.
So let me see. Well, I have this piece right here. This is a gemstone I drew a while ago.
Wow. Oh,
So
wow.
if you get close to it, you can see some kind of small gradations.
Uh-huh.
And I'll usually start like in this area here. I'll start with a darker one, then fade it out with a lighter color. And so I end up using more refill inks for my lighter colors simply because I go from kind of darker to light. And so I'll work typically in that order, because if you work from light to dark, you end up having to just take more time to blend things. So that does take time and practice because I think a lot of people get scared starting off dark. But due to the alcohol pigment, when you put a lighter one on top, it's going to fade it out. It's not just going to like get darker all of a sudden because it's a lighter subtractive color. So when you think in terms of the alcohol pigment, it's going to kind of pick up that darker one and scoot it down the page.
Okay.
And working in the brush technique. So like kind of like this flicking motion. So you kind of lay the pigment down and lift it as you move down the page. So it gives that feathering look. That's usually what I tell people in the blogs is work in a feathering technique, a flicking technique. And that helps to make it smooth.
So did you teach yourself working with Copics or like, because I mean, there are no Copic classes. So this is just all you've learned over years of working with them?
Yeah, this is all self-taught. Because when again at art school, they kind of give you an umbrella of the big boys, like acrylic paint, watercolor, pen and ink, but they don't go into markers because markers for so long, and probably still today, people think it's just, hobby art or hobby material. It's not fine art. And I've showed my gemstones in a small gallery where I live, and people are just blown away when I say it's not a painting, it's markers. They're like, what? So I wish there was more we could do to kind of get that stigma out of people's minds. But with Copic and the range of colors you have, you can achieve quite fantastic things if you learn what works best for you. And to me, dark to light is the best way to get that natural feathering. But I've seen people do light to dark. So I would try both and see what works best for you. Some people like if you work with colored pencils, do you use like the colorless pencil, like the just wax? Do you use that pencil at all? If you do color pencil?
Me? Well,
Yes.
when I used color pencil, yes, I do have one, and I don't use it a lot. For me, the way I would use it, it would mostly be burnishing more than anything else. And it would kind of, so you'd have to be careful a little bit. It would make the colors actually kind of gray after a bit if you're not too careful. So blending, no, you could use a little water sometimes, or a little alcohol actually with the color pencil would sometimes help them. You
That's
know,
true.
you would help them blend a little bit and then you go back over with color again. But it's
Yeah.
extremely time consuming. I mean, it's great when you can do it, but it's very time consuming. But you can get some
Yeah,
fantastic effects, just wonderful.
that's true. Yeah.
Which is just something that you were talking about before with pens. Copic also has pens, which I have never tried and would love to. What kind of
Oh,
pens do you have?
oh my goodness. So I keep these really close to my desk at all times. So here's a variety of the pens we have.
Hmm.
We have 10 different colors. I mostly use black because I just outline in black, but we also have like a blue and olive. I love these ones. We have a pink, a wine color, brown, sepia, warm gray, cool gray.
Will
Like
they
I said,
bleed?
we have 10.
Will they bleed if you over if you like use them for a base and then go over with the Copic markers or
No. So they're what's the phrasing on the marker? Let me phrase it correctly. With their water-based pigment ink and their Copic proof. So basically so the water-based pen with the alcohol pigment shouldn't allow for things to mix, but people come up to me usually when I'm like at a crafting fair or convention and they'll say, Shannon, you were wrong. They do smudge. And I'll be
well,
like, well, wait for the ink to dry. So
well, yeah, waiting for the ink to dry. But also, one is oil and the other is water. So obviously, as you mentioned before, water and oil doesn't really mix all that well. So I would imagine putting the water-based one down first and the oil one after, maybe.
yes. So typically I will do all my outlining first, and then I'll wait for it to dry, scan it, do whatever I need to do, and then I'll use Copic next.
Uh,
So from start to finish of a drawing, I'll go from pencil sketch first, usually pressing pretty lightly because I know I'm going to erase it. And then I'll use one of my multi-liner pens to do all the outlining, and then wait a little bit, erase the pencil mark underneath, because once you use a Copic marker on top of a pencil like line, you can't erase it. Like it kind of solidifies
yeah.
it. I think it kind of works that way with watercolor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it
Yeah.
depends on how much you've used, how much
Mm,
watercolor you've put down. But generally speaking, no. If you don't want your
mhm.
pencil, if you don't want your outlines or anything still there, you're best to remove it beforehand.
Before.
Although,
Yeah.
like Lindsey and I were talking a couple of episodes ago, that actually, of course, you can't always do that, but it can really have a nice effect to leave the
Pencil.
sketch there and then do your water-based
Mm,
colors on top after and just leave it there and let it be organic and part of the thing. When you're able to do that, of course, sometimes you can't, but
yeah.
so many things you can do. So
Yeah.
how many different sizes of pens do you have?
Yeah. So depending on the color, obviously your black color is going to be in a range of, I believe, 7 different sizes. Let me pull up I have a product sheet here. Um, So yes, I just have a sheet here. But so we have the black one, two, three, four, yep, 7. And then we also have a refillable pen. When I put this mark here, it's because you have a cartridge. What do
Okay.
you say?
I'm so
Yes.
there if it's refillable because I have a lot of black ink markers. I'll be fully full disclosure and all. I use Staedtler a lot. But they
They're pretty nice still.
I like Staedtler,
Yeah.
but the tips wear out like crazy. I mean, they don't last long at all.
So
And
does Faber-Castell. No offense to Faber-Castell.
I used to,
But
oh, the memories. I've had Faber-Castell. I've had all the color pencil sets. I used to do horse portraits and dog portraits with color pencil. For years,
oh,
I did that when I was younger. That's like, oh yeah. You can do a lot of good stuff, but it takes so long.
it does.
But yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah, so
yeah, so
please.
sorry, go on.
No, please.
Put my hair back. It gets really fluffy. But yeah, so I have in here my little collection of the multi-liner SP. And so let me do that and a regular multi-liner. Okay. So whoop, this is your regular multi-liner pen. And so this one, it has the kind of cap that tells you what the width is. It says the color here. But this one is the disposable one, and this one will sell a lot cheaper because it's disposable, but still has a wonderful nib. And then the multi-liner SP has an aluminum body. So it's silver aluminum. It's cool to the touch. It has the word SP here, comparison. It's a lot lighter color. And this part back here is what you would unscrew, and then you would buy a cartridge.
Oh, okay.
And you just slide the cartridge in.
So it's like a ballpoint, the refillable ballpoints or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So you would uncap this, and like there's your ink right there. You just slide it into the pen, and then voila. So again, because this pen is refillable and it's aluminum, it will sell for more. But I've had this one for 10 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I bought this when I was still in high school. Yeah, and the cool thing too about the multi-liner SP, you can also replace the nibs as well. Yeah. So when your nibs get...
I'm going to be buying one, definitely.
But what I've learned when I went to art school and I had to buy supplies for different classes, I quickly learned you typically get what you pay for. Like when I had to pay for Escoda brushes, correction, I should say this. Teachers would offer you a premium list or like a discount list, or give or take. So I would try and pick a few things from like the premium list and then buy the rest of my supplies here if I was trying to budget. So again, for your own situation, do what's best. But when I bought these in high school, I was like, holy crap, I can have these forever. I can replace the nibs. I can refill the ink. So I always have cartridges on handy because I personally do a lot of like bulkier outlining with them. So I have like this 0.7. Let me snap the cap here, typical fashion. So it's going to have a really precise nib. And if it starts to kind of alter over time, I just typically Blick is where I'll order from to get the cartridges or the nibs. And
that is wonderful. That's like a little bit more sustainable, maybe, if you could kind of quickly say that, which is really, really nice. And yeah, again, it breaks my heart to buy. I have a whole mess of these, but they wear out so fast.
Yes. Yeah. No, I run into the same problem. And then when I saw that, the multi-liner SPs, that they were refillable, and then we had like a customer appreciation day at SCAD where people would come in representing a certain brand and would tell you more about the brand. It would tell you more about why choose us. And it was one of those events that somebody explained to me the differences. And I was like, bazinga, this is genius. Like, this is going to save me so much money over time. But if you're a generic hobbyist, I will say just get the regular disposable one. But if you're in it for the long haul, personally, I choose any product. I mean, I do work for a brand that I love, granted, so I am biased. But like any brand that has more sustainability, I'm going to choose that because I'm going to do this forever. Like I'm a young adult now, but I hope to do this for 50 plus more years. So if I already have a pen for 10, let's hope it lasts 10 more. And so that's just my, personal choice is to try and do that.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, you've got
hope that answered pen questions.
I think I'm pretty much through most of the questions that I did have. That everything you've explained has pretty much covered most of the usage and all of that stuff. Although I did want to ask quickly, you had markers, or not markers, but pens that were different colors. Are they also refillable, or are they?
So unfortunately, the only refillable one is black. They did have colored multi-liner SP pens in the past, but those unfortunately have been discontinued. And it's similar to other products. It's because of digital. And digital's the devil, gosh darn.
Okay. What do you have is there anything you can tell us about the future of Copic Markers? If they're having any new products that will be coming out, or events or things like this?
Yes. So this past year, and these are all events in the United States because our team is based in, I'm in Missouri, but the rest of our team is in San Francisco Bay Area. We do attend Anime Expo. That's usually July 1st through 4th, roughly, in Los Angeles. That is a huge event. We have products for sale. We have limited edition sets for sale. So if you love the anime world, we are always there. And so that is a great place to see us. Lightbox Expo is also an event we go to in October. That is in Pasadena, California. I know a lot of these events are in California. And so we do that every October. We do have some things coming up next year that I unfortunately can't disclose yet. But one of the new products that it's newer, it's not brand new, but I do want to mention it, is this Copic swatch cards. And so you
I
can,
love swatch cards.
yeah, so it's a waterproof kind of envelope. It's a slick envelope. It's not sealed, so please don't pour water in it. But if you spill like coffee on top, you'll be okay. But I've also customized mine with stickers. But essentially, inside you have each color group, and so it's divided up. Here's your grays, here's more grays, here's your fluorescence and your black. And then there's this blank sheet, and I place underneath every single one when I'm doing my layering so things don't bleed through. But yeah, so it's divided up into all of your color groups. And with 358 colors, I think there's 16 color groups. So yeah, it's just nice to have that. And so because I'm a Copic-aholic, I love Copic so much. I've gathered all of them, pretty much all of them, but even before they hired me. So having a swatch tool like this, especially when I'm doing like urban sketching, I'll take this with me, and then I'll do my urban sketching because I'll know my palette choices.
Yeah.
Or if I don't have that marker with me, I'll leave that area blank and color it in when I get home. But this tool I take with me everywhere. I know it's simple, it looks mundane, it's just paper in a nice envelope.
Amazing.
But hey,
The power of swatches is amazing. Like I've been playing in this art world for a long, long time, and I've only recently, the past couple of years, gotten into like, gee, swatches are kind of cool, and there is
they're
a
so nice.
And so now I've been playing with some Daniel Smith watercolors, and I'm going to be making my own little swatch kit that I can bring with me anywhere. I've got my acrylics. I have my favorite colors, so I'm going to be making swatches for those that I can bring everywhere. And now that I'm going to be getting back into these things, I'm going to be yeah. The power of swatches is underestimated.
Yes, it is. It's undervalued so much.
And that actually, I'm ashamed of not having really taken advantage of that. When I was young, my mother embroidered a lot. Now, anyone who knows with embroidery, you have threads of many, many colors, many, 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 many colors. So you have swatch lists like this with all the colors, and it's just like, if you like color, it doesn't matter that it's for thread. It's just, you're drooling.
Yes.
So it's really cool to be able to have these little things with you and take them anywhere. If you're going to the store, if you're going to sketch outside, which, by the way, again, like Shannon says, go outside and sketch. If you don't know what to, it doesn't matter. You look at something, and once you get into the habit of sketching outside, you're like, you really want to do it and bring the knowledge back with you into your digital art, if that's what you like to do and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Have your swatches, you can use them with your digital art, with your oh no, sorry, I just went off.
Oh, you're fine. You're good. No, swatches are great. And one of the things I was just going to mention too is like they have these little like divisions in each one, so you can layer it like this is 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers. So I know like what they'll look like when I add more layers to them. So I'm like, that's a pretty smart feature. So, but yeah,
watercolor swatches are very often like that too. And then you'll have your black line to know how opaque or transparent they are, which is really cool. Which I see you have similar stuff with that too. Copics are a lot like colors in many ways, except it's ink versus water.
Yes, it's alcohol pigment versus yes. And so too, also, If you have like a watercolor painting and you want to outline certain features of that, you can use the multi-liner pens on top because it's both water.
And I may have tried this, but you can use Copics on top of watercolors too. It
You
works.
can,
Yeah.
yes. And then like with this, the gemstone that I showed earlier, if I shine it in a certain light, you might see like some of the wax bloom. I did spray it before, but I did this a few years ago. But I usually work with color pencils on top. So
Ooh.
depending on, yes, so depending on like what you said, watercolor first, then Copic, that's a great order. I would not do it the other way around. If you have the wax-based or even oil-based pencil, the alcohol pigment will not work on top, so you have to do the Copic first. But Copic is a great tool to add if you're a mixed media artist to have that kind of effect, especially for smaller areas, just because the brush tip is only so big. You can buy paint brushes that are this massive or this massive. So paint is a little more flexible in that way. But like if you want detailing, because Copic's brush is, smaller, it's great for that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
And even with just sorry, one more thing and then I'll be done.
No, no.
Even with whether you have like the old Various ink or the new Copic ink, you can also use this to make ink art. So you don't have to use it just as a refill. You can think of it as like making an ink painting, which is, I'm starting to see more so in like the crafting world. But I've seen beautiful ink artists. There's an artist that lives in Minnesota. Her name's Marissa, Astuary Art. She's like 100,000 followers. She's got a big following, but she makes these beautiful big paintings with Copic ink. And
Wow.
I'm like, I would have never expected that. And then she'll show how she uses like a heat gun to kind of push the ink in different directions,
Oh my.
or like gold ink to or gold leaf to have like a beautiful kind of brass effect to it. So you can use the
God.
inks. Yeah, it's like mind blowing, but it's crazy what you can do with just alcohol ink and how it sits on the
It
surface.
also goes to show you that, just because you've been told you shouldn't do this doesn't mean you can't do it. It can be fun sometimes to just play with it and see what happens. That's how
Yeah,
she probably figured out to do that.
yeah. I've even seen some crafters, it makes me kind of sad, but they will actually cut the nib so that they can have a circle. So it becomes like a dot tool.
Oh, interesting.
So I've seen people do, it makes me sad, but I'm like, hey, if you do make a lot of dots or you want to have like, say you buy a black marker just for that purpose, this is my dot black marker,
Yeah.
and so you cut it and you use it for that, or zero blender, you want to add like that to a blue surface or something in the sky. But there's different things you can do with the wide marker. Speaking of cutting, I've seen people cut little incisions on here to make like a, because you can buy paintbrushes like that that have different length bristles to give different textures. I've seen people do that to their wide nibs as well.
That's clever.
So there's a lot you can do with it. It's just like for me as an artist, I'm like, oh no, don't cut it. I love those nibs,
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah. Well, anyway.
yeah,
But if you have one just for that, it's like having a special
yeah,
paint. There are
exactly.
brushes that I have that I've had for a long time, and they lose their points or whatever. So you intentionally take the nice tip of the brush, which costs you $30 or something, and you go
Hmm.
to make it like this. Then you have the
Hmm.
perfect brush for whatever texture you need that doesn't need a tip. So yeah, you do what you do what you got to do with what you got, and you very often get something a little different. So that's very cool.
I
We'll
love that.
slowly close this out. Do you have any last advice that you would like to give about using Copics? Things they could try. Sorry, that's our sausage dog. Sorry.
Oh,
Um,
it's fine.
do you have any advice on art or just using Copics in general or anything you'd like to share that I didn't ask?
Oh, gosh. I think we covered a lot of stuff. I don't really know if I have any other Copic related techniques or advice, but just, oh, besides organization, especially as you acquire more, always be organized with your materials. I paint as well. I use like Posca acrylic markers. I use color pencils. So in your workspace, as you expand to new mediums, just stay organized, because otherwise it just turns into a bucket of stuff. And then it gets harder, and like it's more deterring to get in that creative zone. So like I have like a marker shelf over here. I buy, what is it? Spectrum Noir. You can buy like a pack of 6 marker shelves.
Ooh.
And so you can buy a shelf of markers, or like, because I have bought all of the 72-piece sets. So I have like I've color coded them. So here's my brown and my blue.
That. Oh, you're so organized.
So I would say like staying organized is just makes creating easier and more fun, because no one wants to think like, oh, I need to organize it before I start. Like it's just easier.
Wish they had that for paint tubes.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah. Desk organization.
I just have drawers with tons of paint tubes stuffed in there, and I have to go through them every time. Anyway, what you gonna do?
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Where can everyone find you and your art, and also the Copic company? And if you could also send me all those links, and I'll share them in the video.
Sure, yes. So my name is Shannon Brouk. My last name is spelled weird. So it's SHANNON and then BROUK. Because my name is so weird, I can use that on Instagram and no one takes that handle. So I'm mostly on Instagram. That's the one social media that I'm mostly attuned with. Otherwise, it's just my website, shannonbrouk.art, A-R-T.
Okay.
And so that's it.
Great. And where can people find the company you work for if they want to go look at some of the products to try?
Absolutely, yes. So we have a website, and that's excuse me, copic.too.com. 2 is our umbrella company. Copic is in that. So copic.too.com, and then Copic Official US. So Copic Official US is, like I said, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, it's there. And so that will be all things typically United States, but there is North America included in that too.
Right. So if anyone wants to contact, if anybody who's listening or watching wants to contact, which email address?
TCA. So just TCA at us.too.com.
Okay, US.
And if there's any like kind of customer support issues, or you have a question about your ink, your marker drying out, that's the support email, the support at us.too.com.
Okay.
So we have so if there's anything like that, or if you bought a product from us through an authorized retailer and the product turned out weird, we will take care of you as well.
Right. Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much for having come to talk. This has been really, really interesting. It's fun to talk with people who love their tools. That there's nothing more interesting than that. Thank you so much. Hopefully you'll come back on one time if something really new and fascinating is coming out.
Sure.
With your art or whatever. Please send me all the links to all these places that you've mentioned so that people can visit you.
Okay, sweet.
And I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you so much. You as well. And thank you for having me on. It's been a blast.
Oh, thank you. I've really had a good time. Bye-bye.